I got addicted to a losing game.
Why Angelica Hale's 2026 return is leaving the world in tears. What happens when the most famous child in the world simply decides to walk away from the cameras? For nearly a decade, the name Angelica Hale was synonymous with a specific kind of magic, the kind that only happens once in a generation on a global stage. We all remember the moment in 2017 when a 9-year-old girl with a smile that could light up a stadium stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage and unleashed a voice that seemed physically impossible for her size. She didn't just win, she conquered, becoming the first contestant in history to secure 2 golden buzzers. But as the confetti settled and the viral clips began to age, something strange happened. The invitations to major talk shows started to thin out. The high-profile performances became rarer. To the casual observer, it appeared as though the industry had chewed up another child star and moved on to the next viral sensation. However, behind that perceived silence was a story far more complex than a simple fading away. Reporters and industry insiders began to whisper about the toll that such early, explosive fame takes on a developing mind and a developing voice. Was she hiding from the pressure, or was there a medical reason for her sudden retreat? For years, the public was left with nothing but old YouTube clips and the haunting question of whether we would ever hear that voice again. As we entered the mid-2020s, the Angelica Hale mystery became a topic of intense speculation on social media, with fans dissecting every rare Instagram post for clues about her whereabouts. It turns out, the silence wasn't an ending. It was a calculated, necessary withdrawal from a world that wanted too much from her, too soon. She wasn't just growing up. She was fighting to reclaim a childhood that had been sold to the highest bidder in the name of entertainment. And now, in 2026, we are finally seeing the result of that long, quiet exile. To understand the weight of her 2026 return, we have to look back at the medical files that the public almost forgot, files that prove she shouldn't even be breathing, let alone singing. Before the gold confetti, there were white hospital walls and the steady, rhythmic beeping of life support. In 2012, long before she became a household name, Angelica was caught in a life-or-death struggle that sounds like a parent's worst nightmare. What started as a simple case of pneumonia quickly mutated into a terrifying condition known as septic shock. Her body began to turn on itself, her kidneys failed, and her lungs began to fill with fluid. She spent 80 days in a hospital bed, her life hanging by a literal thread as she was placed on ECMO, a machine that breathes for you when your own body has given up. This wasn't just a health scare, it was a total system collapse. Even after she survived the initial crisis, she spent years as a medical prisoner, tethered to dialysis machines for hours every single day until her mother made the ultimate sacrifice, donating her own kidney to save her daughter's life. When she eventually stood on that stage years later, the audience saw a talent, but the doctors saw a statistical anomaly. However, recent reports from 2026 suggest that the miracle came with a hidden cost. Chronic illness doesn't just disappear once you become famous. There has been significant speculation regarding the long-term effects of those early treatments on her vocal cords and her physical stamina. Insiders suggest that her recent disappearance was partly due to a secondary health battle that was kept strictly under wraps to avoid the pity narrative. The tears we are seeing today are not just for her talent, but for the sheer physical agony she overcame to stand upright on a stage once more. This is the story of a girl who looked into the abyss and refused to blink, proving that her greatest gift isn't her voice, but her indestructible will to survive. While the world looked for her in Hollywood, Angelica Hale was hiding in plain sight in the one place where you can truly reinvent yourself: the cutthroat streets of New York City. The transition from child prodigy to adult artist is a graveyard of careers. Most young stars try to bridge the gap with provocative scandals or desperate attempts to stay relevant. But Angelica took a different path, one that required a level of discipline rarely seen in the age of TikTok. Reports surfaced that she had moved to Manhattan, not to record a pop album, but to start over as a student of the craft. She traded the glitz of televised competitions for the grueling, unglamorous world of Broadway workshops. This was a period of total reinvention. Living on her own for the first time, she had to navigate the reality of being a former star in a city that doesn't care about your past accolades. She was seen entering rehearsal studios at dawn and leaving late at night, working with vocal coaches to rebuild a voice that was naturally changing as she hit adulthood. This was a high-stakes gamble. If her voice didn't settle into its new, mature tone, the comeback would be over before it began. There were whispers in the theater community that she was struggling, that the childhood magic was gone, and she was finding it hard to compete with seasoned Broadway veterans. But those rumors were silenced when she was cast in the lead role of Boop, the musical. It was a signal to the industry that she was no longer a kid with a big voice, but a leading lady with the technical precision to carry a multi-million-dollar production. This period of silent growth is exactly why her 2026 return feels so monumental. She didn't just grow up, she evolved. She took the time to ensure that when she finally stepped back into the global spotlight, she wasn't just a memory of a 9-year-old girl, but a fully realized woman with a story that demanded to be heard on her own terms. When the curtain finally rose on her 2026 debut, the audience didn't hear the high-pitched belting of a child. They heard a sound so hauntingly different that it left the room in a stunned, emotional silence. The new Angelica is a revelation that has sent shockwaves through the music industry. For years, skeptics argued that her voice was a product of youth, a biological fluke that would fade once she hit her 20s. They couldn't have been more wrong. Her 2026 performances have revealed a voice that is deeper, richer, and packed with an emotional resonance that only comes from true life experience. She is no longer just hitting the notes, she is interpreting them. Journalists who attended her recent Chapter 1 showcase described an atmosphere that felt less like a concert and more like a collective catharsis. There is a raw, jagged edge to her vocals now that reflects the years of medical trauma and the pressure of public expectation. She has moved away from the glossy, overproduced pop sound that many expected, instead leaning into a soulful, cinematic style that showcases her new range. But it's not just the sound that's changing, it's the lyrics. For the first time, she is addressing the miracle kid narrative head-on, singing about the fear of being a has-been at 18 and the struggle of living in a body that has been through a war. This vulnerability is exactly what is leaving the world in tears. It's the sound of a survivor finally telling her own story without a script or a panel of judges. The speculation about whether she still had it has been replaced by a new consensus. She is better than she ever was. The industry is currently scrambling to keep up with this new artist who seems to have appeared out of nowhere, despite being in the public eye for a decade. This isn't just a return to the charts. It's a total reclamation of her identity, and the world is finally listening to what she actually has to say. While the world saw a history-making victory, internal reports suggest that the weight of the double golden buzzer became a psychological anchor that almost dragged Angelica's career into the depths of obscurity. Being the first person to ever achieve 2 golden buzzers wasn't just an honor. It was a massive, invisible burden that dictated every move Angelica made for years. In the world of reality television, once you hit the absolute ceiling of success at age 9, there is nowhere to go but down. Behind the scenes, the pressure to replicate that viral shock factor was immense. Sources close to her early management team suggest that there was a constant, exhausting search for the next big moment, leading to a creative burnout that was never publicized. Every performance was compared to her 9-year-old self, creating a bizarre reality where a teenager was essentially competing against a ghost of her own childhood. This prodigy trap is a well-documented phenomenon in the industry, often leading to deep-seated resentment or a total loss of identity. Investigative journalists covering the talent show circuit have noted that the golden buzzer winners often face a unique struggle. The public expects them to remain frozen in time, forever the cute kid with the big voice. As Angelica's voice began to naturally change with age, the fear within her camp was palpable. Speculation arose that she was being pushed to maintain a vocal range that was no longer healthy for her developing cords, just to satisfy the expectations of a nostalgic audience. This period of her life was characterized by a polished exterior that hid a growing sense of isolation. The tears we see in 2026 are partly a release of that decade-long pressure. She is finally stepping out from under the shadow of the golden buzzer and proving that she is a human being, not a permanent viral clip. It's the sound of a woman who has finally stopped trying to impress the judges and started trying to find herself. Rumors of a quiet boycott by major labels began to circulate when Angelica refused to follow the standard pop princess blueprint, leading many to believe she had been blacklisted by the very industry that once championed her. As Angelica entered her mid-teens, a rift reportedly opened between her vision for her future and the plans that major record labels had in mind. In the high-stakes world of music distribution, a former child star is often viewed as a commodity that needs to be rebranded, with a controversial or edgy image to stay relevant. Investigative reports from industry insiders suggest that Angelica was presented with several contracts that would have required a drastic, perhaps even shocking, change in her public persona, a path many other child stars have taken to disastrous results. When she and her family reportedly turned down these deals in favor of a more authentic, slow-burn approach, the doors to mainstream radio seemed to suddenly swing shut. This led to what many fans called the silent years, where it appeared she had been sidelined. Speculation ran rampant. Was she too difficult to work with, or was she simply refusing to be a puppet? This period was a test of her resolve. While her peers were chasing tick trends, Angelica was reportedly being told that her wholesome image was a liability in a market that rewards controversy. However, the 2026 return proves that her refusal to sell out was the move of her career. By bypassing the traditional label system and building her own path through theater and independent projects, she effectively broke the blacklist. Her current success is a direct challenge to the industry's obsession with manufactured drama. She didn't need a scandal to get back into the spotlight. She just needed her truth. This defiance is what makes her current journey so emotional for her followers. It's a victory for every artist who was told they weren't marketable enough to succeed on their own terms. As we look toward the horizon of 2027 and beyond, the question is no longer whether Angelica Hale can survive, but how far this new, indestructible version of herself can actually go. The impact of Angelica's 2026 return is being felt far beyond the music charts. It is changing the way the industry views longevity and resilience. Medical experts who once followed her case are now using her journey as a study in physical and vocal recovery, noting that her ability to maintain such a high level of performance after total organ failure is nothing short of a scientific marvel. But the real story is her future. Reports indicate that she is currently in talks for a major cinematic role that would combine her acting talent with her newfound vocal depth, potentially positioning her for the EGOT path that only the elite ever achieve. There is also heavy speculation regarding a global resilience tour, which would focus on performing in hospitals and for families dealing with chronic illness, turning her concerts into a form of collective healing. The tears we see today are a testament to the fact that her story is no longer a tragedy. It's a blueprint for anyone who has been told their time is up. We are witnessing the birth of a legacy that transcends the talent show genre. Angelica has transitioned from a miracle child to a cultural icon of perseverance. As she continues to release her Chapter 1 project, the world is watching with bated breath, realizing that The Girl on Fire wasn't just a catchy title, it was a prophecy. She didn't just survive the flames of illness and the pressures of fame. She used them to forge a voice that is now truly unstoppable. In the end, the story of Angelica Hale is not about the buzzers, the fame, or even the music. It is a haunting reminder of the power of the human spirit to reclaim what was thought to be lost forever. When we look back at the footage of that 9-year-old girl, we see a miracle. When we look at the woman standing before us in 2026, we see a master of her own destiny. The tears being shed around the world are a recognition of a journey that most of us wouldn't have the strength to complete. Angelica Hale was exposed to the highest highs and the lowest lows before she was even old enough to drive. Yet she emerged with a grace that is almost unheard of in the modern celebrity landscape. This return isn't just about a comeback. It's about a closing of a chapter and the beginning of a new era where she is no longer defined by what happened to her, but by what she has chosen to become. She has proven that miracles don't just happen in hospitals or on stage. They happen in the quiet moments of choosing to try one more time. As the world continues to react to her 2026 revelation, one thing is certain: the silence is officially over. Angelica Hale has reclaimed her voice, her story, and her place in history. And as she looks into the camera now, there is no more mystery, only the clear, undeniable presence of a legend in the making. The world may have cried for the little girl who almost died, but today, we cheer for the woman who finally learned how to live.